Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode in the series The Cross Questioned. In this series, we've been looking at the Christian version of the crucifixion and the resurrection. And we're dealing with all the issues that pertain to that Easter weekend, that fateful 3 days or 1.5 days, however we want to calculate the crucifixion scene and that period of time. And we've been looking at each of the events that took place and dissecting it and giving possible theories that are just as acceptable as the interpretation given by Christians today. When they come knocking on your door and they try to evangelize you and tell you of the great miracles that took place on the crucifixion or the day of the crucifixion. You have, through this series, been able to find countless numbers of as acceptable information that you can give them once they come knocking on your door. And if you're a Christian or an evangelist or a missionary watching this and it's upsetting you, that's good. It should upset you because you should ask yourself, why have I just accepted this on face value without looking at what the text indeed says? It is shocking to find that when a questionnaire was done amongst a group of over 1,000 individuals coming from Bible-believing backgrounds of school-going age, that was their grade 12, grade 11 and 12, and they'll ask them to give an accurate account of what they know with knowledge, not what they've heard, not what they think, but the knowledge they have received from their Bible studies, from their priests, from theology, from their own research, to give an accurate record of what happens before Jesus is crucified, when he's in the garden, up to the crucifixion and his resurrection. Over 90% of the people had the incorrect understanding of what happened. They followed the Hollywood scenario. They followed the Hollywood text. They followed the text that is not based on Matthew, Mark, or Luke, or John's account, but totally different version of it alone. So that shows you that even though you think you know what happened on those fateful days, you are not reading it. You are looking at the letters and you're remembering what your priest told you to read. You're reading into what the text says and not reading what the text actually says and tells you. Don't go ask people, read the text. If the text has to be interpreted to you, if the text has to be explained to you, what type of text is that? What type of text are you reading that somebody has said, even though it says that in black and white, that's not what it actually means. It means this. Then you can't trust that text. This is why we trust the Quran. What you see is what you get. No one has to say, even though it says God is the one and only, it doesn't really mean that. It means that. That's exactly what it means in the Quran. Yes, we have scholars. Yes, we have imams. Yes, we have leaders who will take us through the tafsir. But that is just to make it even more pertinent. They explain the historical events. They explain what was happening in that time to make it more richer to you. But you can still understand it even if no one ever explains it to you, because it is so simple to understand. So if you are unable to read the one chapter that is supposed to be the most important chapter in your life, your whole salvation, it depends on this chapter. If someone has to explain it to you, then you are in serious trouble. Last time we began to look at the issue of the burial, where Jesus was supposed to have been buried. Our job is not to agree with what the text says. Our job is purely to point out the inconsistencies with the text and to allow you to realize that there are great inconsistencies and doubt that you should have when reading it. We are demotivating. We are not motivating in what we are doing. We are not here to tell you that the sun is going to shine tomorrow and everything is going to be airy, cherry, and fine. We are here to tell you that you are in great danger, that you are walking on rocky ground if you follow this text that is indeed leading you away from God. Not just because we say so, because if you read the text itself, it tells you you're on rocky ground. It does not agree with each other. And don't listen to the priest who says to you, or the pastor that says to you, or the theologian, or the book that you read on Christianity, defending Christianity, who says it doesn't matter. Each of the gospel writers are writing it from their perspective. If they're writing it from their perspective and they don't agree, that means they're seeing things at a different time. They are not recording the same event. They're recording different events. Surely, if you're all watching the same football match, there are certain things that you're going to agree on. You're going to agree on which two teams were playing. You're not going to say there were 5 teams playing. You're going to say there were only 2 teams playing. You're going to agree what the location of that event was taking place, where the stadium was. You are going to agree on the score. Who scored what? You're going to agree on the mascot that those teams have. You're going to agree on the outcome of that event. You're not going to have different views on that event. It has to be exactly the same. You might have a bias on the players, and you might say, even though our team was defeated, so-and-so put up a brave fight. That's normal, because you are coming from your own bias, whether you're for that team or against that team, with the team that wins or with that team that loses. But the basic information has to agree. The fundamentally important information has to agree. The rest doesn't matter. But we're finding in the New Testament, especially when it comes with dealing with your eternal salvation, that it does not agree. It does not give you a clear cut. In fact, it gives you the worst picture possible for your eternal salvation, for your soul, which is what this book is fighting for. This book is fighting for your soul. Did not Jesus say himself, believe not every spirit, but test it to see whether it is of God or not? The spirit of this book is leading you astray. The spirit of this book is leading you to the hellfire. It is destroying your soul. This is why when people come to you, and if you're a Christian watching this, and they talk about these, you put your fingers in your ear and you go, la, 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 don't talk about it. Because you refuse to hear. There is a spirit that is preventing you from hearing the truth. Open your eyes, as millions have done. Millions of Christians every year in Africa. I'm not even talking about all the rest of the world. I can only talk about places that I know. Over 10 million Christians every year leave Christianity. They get nothing. There's no food parcels. There's no rent paid for. There's no money being given to them. And so 10 million people just in Africa, from rural Africa, from intelligent Africa, from universities and colleges, doctors, lawyers, professors are becoming Muslims. Theologians are becoming Muslims. So there must be some truth. And why are they doing it? Because they looked at the text, like I'm telling you to look at the text, and they said, this doesn't make sense. I'm going way off topic, so let's move straight back into what we are talking about today. Today we're going to look at the next issue. We looked at the grave and how it was made last episode, but now let's look at the actual burial process. If the tomb that we are told to believe was honed out of a rock, then it must have been a very, very rocky area that this body was placed in. And if it is a rocky area, we know it's a rocky area, because according to the text, the place is called the skull, where he is buried, on top of this mountain, or this hill, or this garden area. So it obviously looked like a human skull of some sort. And the body was taken off this cross later in the evening, as we are told from the Bible. And Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus would have had to use certain amounts of light to carry out their task. Imagine the sun has just gone down, or just on its way down. We don't know if it was really dark or it was just going down. But you're still going to take the body off. You've got to untie it from the cross or the post or the tree or whatever it was, and remove it and take it down. Then you've got to lay it in a cloth so that you can carry it. You're not going to just haul it over your shoulder. And you've got to carry this. So only 2 nights earlier, when we look in the book of John, John chapter 18, verse 3, it says that when they came to arrest Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, they had to come in equipped with lanterns and torches. So we know that it must have been quite dark. And we know that there was no full moon at that time, simply by going onto Google and going back to that time period. I did it. There was no full moon that night. So it was dark. In fact, the Bible actually says, and darkness came over the entire land from 3 o'clock until later in the evening. So there was no darkness disappearing. It was dark. Now you might ask, what is all this about? Joseph was a man of substantial wealth, and so was Nicodemus. Joseph went in boldly to Pilate and said, Pilate, give me the body of Jesus. So Pilate just gave it to him. Who is this man that he should give it to him? He obviously was a very influential person, as we find in Mark chapter 15, verse 43. If anyone else had asked for the body, they would have said, you have got no chance. But he must have been influential if they gave him the body. And so we see that there was now no need to have a procession through the streets where everyone would see. It's dark already. The body is wrapped up conveniently. The gravesite is right there. This could have been a way of helping them to get the body to the place as soon as possible. So we don't see them having lights or torches or anything. Nothing is spoken about. So it must have been very, very close to where he was buried. According to what we see in the text, we can surmise and we can guess and we can say, well, there's no evidence that the tomb was quite close there. But we know because the text says that there is no lighting. No one came with torches. So there was no ordinary burial. So again, we can see that there is a huge possibility by the text itself, by looking at all this information, that there is a conspiracy that we could easily look at and say this was all done on purpose. The timing and everything was done on purpose so that this body could be evacuated so no one else could see it. Well, it's time for us to take a break, and when we get back from the break, we'll try and cover as much as we can, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. In the fact that we don't hear in the text, and we have to stick to the text. It's no use coming up with theories of your own. The text says that they did not have any lights with them. There's no one with torches. There's no one with anything. From 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was darkness upon the whole area. Then we hear from the text that the sun had gone down when they took the body down. Then it is taken to the grave, and from the fact that we are told that it was a rocky area that they cut the tomb out of, means that it would have been very, very difficult to walk around in the night without falling. You would have collapsed, broken your own legs, and maybe even killed yourself. So we know that where the crucifixion took place, or the binding, or whatever you want to call it, or tied to the tree, the grave area must have been within a few meters. Otherwise, they wouldn't have seen it, wouldn't have been able to get there. So maybe we see this whole procession of taking the body down, wrapping it in cloth, taking it to the tomb. All this is done in case somebody is observing what is happening. But we know that they couldn't have really been observing too much because most of the people were far away, as you've already seen in the text. But there is this little text that we find in Mark chapter 15, verse 47. It says, when they brought the body into the tomb, it says that the women were observing how the body was laid. Now, if Jesus was really dead according to the text, would these disciples of Jesus be heartless as to not allow the woman to have looked at this dead body or of their master or of their Messiah? Hardly understandable, unless, of course, Jesus was not in fact dead and he was taken down and he was still perhaps breathing very shallow. So they didn't want the woman to come too close. Maybe this was part of the conspiracy. It is just as acceptable a theory, just as feasible from what we see in the text, as the interpretation you would like to give. The interpretation that observing how his body was laid, could we say they wanted to see where his body was, so that when they came back they could anoint the body 3 days later. Why would you observe where the body was? How would that make any difference? Well, how are you going to put spices on the body 3 days later? It is less likely that that is an explanation than the explanation we have given. But our explanation is just made up. This is not real, what we are saying. What we are saying is just to give you an opportunity to look that there are many interpretations to this text. And all of them are as equal to the ones that you are giving. We as Muslims do not agree and believe in any of this. So if we read it from the text, it is more likely from the text and everything that has led up to this point that he was alive and could not allow the woman to come near because they would have seen that body alive. Maybe the body that was there, as we have looked at before, even if we had to agree on the text. They were afraid of letting the woman come to have a look because they'd have identified and said, but this is not Jesus, the son of Mary. This is somebody else. Where is Jesus? He was supposed to be on the cross. Who is this man? And maybe that's why they didn't want him to come. That's an alternative number 2. Alternative theory number 3 is that the person who was there was not Jesus, was a substitute, but he wasn't dead and was alive, and there they didn't want to let him come to have a look at that body too. So there are 3 very equally acceptable theories from the text itself, let alone what we as Muslims put forward. So these women that were there were part of this show, perhaps, to have a look at what's happening. Maybe they had no idea what was actually going on. Maybe they did have an idea what was going on. But it says in the text that in Luke chapter 23, verse 56, that they went home and prepared spices and ointments, or spices and treatments, as some of the versions say. So they weren't there. They didn't stay around. They just observed where the body was, and they went home to prepare spices and ointments. But this raises another question. This is Friday. They didn't want to deal with the body any further by washing the body. We know that they didn't wash the body. And the answer that the apologist gives is that, yes, because it's the Sabbath, they weren't allowed to work. But here in Luke chapter 23, verse 56, they go home and prepare spices and ointments. The same amount of time that it took them to go home and prepare spices and ointments, they could have just quickly taken a 5-minute job and washed the body. But this was done on purpose so they couldn't observe the body. Either they had the substitutional sacrifice, they didn't want the woman to identify because, so we see this situation here in Luke chapter 23, verse 56, where we have the woman going home and have plenty of time to prepare spices and ointments, yet we are told by apologists the reason they couldn't wash the body or do anything, and they had to rush back, is because the night was coming. It doesn't make any sense. They weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath, whether it be outside the house or whether it be inside the house. In fact, many of the Orthodox Jews to this very day have timers because they're not even allowed to switch on a light switch in their home. So they have timers in their home because even if you flick a light switch today in the 21st century, you have broken the Sabbath. If a mosquito lands on your skin on the Sabbath and you kill it, you are breaking the Sabbath because you have gone hunting on the Sabbath. Do you really think that the text would allow them to go make spices and ointments and prepare spices and ointments? Again, we see the inconsistencies of this text. And that is why we know that this text is unreliable. It's unbelievable, let's put it that way. And so that we see when they said in Luke chapter 23, verse 55, how they saw his body laid, maybe they knew that something was amiss, the fact that they were not being allowed there. And maybe they were let in on the secret, or perhaps they weren't. We don't know for sure. But either way, it leads to the idea, and again, we as Muslims do not believe this, that he was in fact alive, whoever it was, whether it be the substitutional sacrifice, whether it be the supposed body of Jesus, or whoever it is. According to the text, it's more likely, from what we've seen so far, that this body that is there is still alive and not, in fact, dead. The other point that I forgot to raise as one of the evidences that I spoke about last episode is that when they poke the body of Jesus, when he's on the cross, when they don't break his legs but they poke his side, the text says that blood and water flows out. But he's been on the cross or the post or the tree for about 4 hours. It's hot. It's daytime. If you poked a body in a mortuary after 4 hours, nothing comes out. You have to have a pumping heart for blood to come gushing out, or water to come gushing out, or whatever it is. It doesn't come out of a dead body. So that is another thing that we could add to the theory of the fact that either this is a very, very bad writer who is trying to dramatize things, or if it is in fact true that whoever is on this cross is in fact not dead. And so this adds to the theory of the living person on the cross and not a dead sacrifice. Our job is not to prove who was on the cross, simply to prove that the person who was on it, there's just as much evidence to the fact that he was not dead. In fact, there's more evidence that he was not dead, and hardly any evidence to the fact that he was dead. The only evidence that we have that he was dead are two accounts. One, that he claims to be dead and bows his head and said, "I hand myself over to you," or "It is finished," or my God, why have you forsaken me?" That's the one evidence. And the second one is by the statement of a pagan who says, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Other than that, there is no other evidence. However, we have produced countless numbers of evidence that he was not dead. We do not agree with that. We don't believe in any of this, but we're showing you from the text that the text is unreliable in what it is actually saying. What about the so-called cloth that he is wrapped in, the holy shroud, as Christians, especially Catholics, and some of the Protestants also like? In the cathedral of the Turin, there is a piece of linen, about 14 feet in length. And it's been analyzed by many people over the years. Some people say it's fake, some people say it's genuine. Again, it's one of those artifacts that just seem to appear when it's convenient for people's faith to be increased. And apparently it has the imprint, and I've seen these pictures, and to me it's a fake, and I'll tell you why it's a fake. But anyway, on it there is an imprint of supposedly a body that was wrapped, or not wrapped, but laid over. So imagine that this is the head of the person, and that is the foot of the person. There's one sheet laid like that, and one sheet laid like that. It's not wrapped. Otherwise, the imprint would be on the binding. So it is two perfect sheets opened up, and that's how it appears, which is against the text, but we'll get to that just now. It is claimed that this piece of cloth was the one that Joseph of Arimathea used to wrap the body of the crucified Jesus. It is often stated that unless the shroud can be proved as genuine, then it is a fake. And so we believe that it is a fake. And I'll tell you why it is a fake. Because in the text itself, it says that strips of cloth were used to bind him, not a single sheet. In the story, we are told that they wrapped him in a cloth. So it's not an idea of one sheet being put over. So from the text, we know that it was not a single sheet. They wound him in linen cloth, or as the New English Bible says, he was wrapped in strips. So we don't even have to go much further into it. So strips were used to put around his body, as Luke says in Luke chapter 24 and verse 12. The manuscripts differ from one manuscript to the other on how the body was wrapped, but altogether we know that the body was not placed in a single sheet, or one sheet over the top, or one sheet over the bottom. Also, it speaks about in the text that after they wrapped his body, a napkin was put over, a cloth was put over his face, as found in John chapter 20, verse 7. So we know it's fake, it's not true. Well, that's all the time we have, so make sure you tune in again. So for me, Areeb Islam, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.